The story opened with a haunting scene of desolation. Countless monstrous corpses littered the ground, their lifeless forms a grim testament to a brutal battle. Amid the carnage stood a young girl, her hand gripping a dagger that pulsed with a venomous otherworldly aura. She addressed the protagonist, her voice dripping with a mix of admiration and malice, declaring him truly special. The protagonist, battered and bleeding, lay atop the remains of a defeated monster, his body drenched in blood. The girl, revealed to be his little sister, coldly remarked on his extraordinary feat. Despite having a limited lifespan of just 100 years, he had managed to conquer the ancient gods' runes and vanquish a horde of monsters. Yet she revealed her true intent. She had come to claim the artifact he had fought so hard to obtain, the Eye of Judgment. Despite his grievous injuries, the protagonist confronted her, his voice trembling with betrayal. He demanded to know why his little sister would turn against him at this pivotal moment. Her response was icy and disdainful. She revealed a truth that shattered him. He was not her blood brother, but merely an adopted child. With a sneer, she dismissed their familial bond, declaring that he had no right to call himself her brother. As she spoke, a blond man stepped forward. His tone was mocking yet calm as he addressed the little sister, chiding her for her harsh words. However, his true intentions were clear. He acknowledged the protagonist's usefulness, particularly his unwavering love for her, which they had exploited to secure the Eye of Judgment. The blond man, named Song Fei, revealed the depths of their deception. The Soul Reaper dagger the little sister wielded was designed to drain the protagonist's life force, a plan meticulously orchestrated to ensure their victory. The protagonist's rage ignited as he recalled the sacrifices he had made for his little sister. After their parents' passing, he had taken on the role of her protector, enduring countless risks and hardships, especially after the arrival of the gods' game. Yet, her resentment surfaced as she accused him of controlling her life, dictating her every move under the guise of discipline. She admitted that while his efforts had been useful in securing their survival, they no longer needed him now that they possessed the Eye of Judgment. Her words were a final cruel dismissal of his years of devotion. Song Fei, seizing the moment, lunged at the protagonist with his sword, urging him to accept his fate with dignity. He promised to care for the little sister, but the protagonist's fury reached its zenith. He vowed that even in death, he would never forgive them. Before he could act, however, Song Fei's blade struck with lethal precision, severing the protagonist's neck in a single, merciless motion. As his consciousness faded, the protagonist reflected on the world he left behind, a world forever altered by the gods' game. In 2025, the forgotten game of the gods had descended upon humanity, dragging unsuspecting individuals into a nightmarish realm while they slept. In this world, life itself became the currency. Death cost fragments of one's lifespan, while slaying monsters could restore it. Players could extract skills from the game, consuming their life force to wield unimaginable powers in reality. The strong could crush tanks with their bare hands, slice through airplanes with swords, and even withstand nuclear explosions. The world had descended into chaos, with disaster spreading like wildfire. The protagonist had survived this brutal new reality, protecting his little sister through countless trials. He had clawed his way to becoming one of the 100 strongest individuals in the world, overcoming insurmountable odds to reach the ruins of the ancient gods and claim the Eye of Judgment. He had been on the cusp of reaching the pinnacle of this new world, only to be betrayed by the one person he trusted most. His life's work, his sacrifices, had been reduced to nothing, a mere stepping stone for others. As he lay dying, he vowed that if given another chance, he would live for himself, not for others. Suddenly, the scene shifted. The protagonist awakened in his bed, his body unharmed. Disoriented, he questioned whether he had truly returned to the real world. Glancing at his phone, he noticed the date, 2025. The realization dawned on him he had been reborn 9 years in the past, on the very day the gods' game began. Staring out the window, he understood that this was his second chance, an opportunity to rewrite his destiny. The world outside was still unaware of the cataclysm to come, but the protagonist knew the truth. This time he would not be a pawn in someone else's game. This time he would live for himself. Sometime later, the tranquility of the protagonist's morning was shattered as the door burst open. His little sister stormed in, her face flushed with anger. She shouted at him, demanding to know why he hadn't been answering her calls. The protagonist, seated calmly with a cup of coffee in hand, remained silent, his expression unreadable. Undeterred by his lack of response, she vented her frustration by kicking over a trash bin, sending its contents scattering across the floor. The protagonist watched her tantrum with a detached calm, his mind drifting back to the events of his past life. He recalled that on the day the forgotten game of the gods arrived, he had a heated argument with his little sister, one that had been brewing for some time. The source of their conflict was none other than Song Fei, the famous idol who had captivated his sister's heart. In her eyes, Song Fei was a glamorous and untouchable star, but the protagonist knew the truth behind the polished facade. Song Fei was a manipulative scoundrel who preyed on his fans, exploiting them for money and worse. Determined to protect his little sister from falling victim to Song Fei's schemes, the protagonist had forbidden her from associating with him. Yet his efforts to shield her had only driven a wedge between them. Instead of gratitude, he was met with accusations of controlling her life and interfering in her choices. Now, as his little sister continued her tirade, she blamed him for Song Fei's recent drop in the idol rankings, claiming it was because the protagonist refused to give her money to support him. Her words were a whirlwind of entitlement and misplaced anger, but the protagonist had heard enough. In a swift, decisive motion, he rose from his seat and delivered a powerful slap across her face. The force of the blow sent her stumbling backward, her eyes wide with shock. Tears welled up in her eyes as she trembled, her voice quivering as she demanded to know how he could dare hit her. The protagonist's gaze was cold and menacing as he spoke. He told her that he had neither the time nor the desire to argue with her today, but if she continued her incessant shouting, he wouldn't hesitate to silence her himself. Reaching into his pocket, he pulled out a golden credit card and tossed it at her. He explained that this card contained all the money their parents had left for her. Despite the hardships he had faced over the years, he had never touched a single cent of it. But today, he decided to give her everything, every last penny. As he turned to leave, he added that for the sake of their parents, he wouldn't argue with her or dictate how she spent the money. However, she should listen carefully. From this day forward, he no longer considered her his little sister. With that, he walked away, closing the door behind him and leaving her standing there, tears streaming down her face. Alone in his room, the protagonist reflected on the weight of his decision. In his past life, he had sacrificed too much, trying to protect his little sister from harm. There were countless secret locations and treasures within the god's game that he had avoided exploring because they were too dangerous for her. He had given up opportunities for growth and power, all in the name of keeping her safe. But now, as he prepared to take sleeping pills to enter the game once more, he felt a strange sense of liberation. He wondered how far he could go without the burden of his little sister holding him back. This time, he vowed to use the knowledge from his past life to surge ahead of everyone else, claiming the power and opportunities he had once forsaken. As for his little sister, he decided to let her prove her worth on her own. She would have to navigate the harsh realities of the world without his guidance or protection. And as for Song Fei, the man who had orchestrated his betrayal and downfall in his past life, the protagonist's eyes darkened with resolve. He promised himself that he would kill Song Fei with his own hands, ensuring that the manipulative idol paid for his sins. The scene shifted to the protagonist, standing in a vast, otherworldly space, a grand hall filled with towering mirrors that shimmered with an ethereal glow. He explained that this was the Hall of Profession Selection, a pivotal location where players chose their path in the god's game. In his past life, he had spent hours here, overwhelmed by nerves and uncertainty. But now, with the wisdom of his previous experiences, he moved with purpose and confidence. This time he knew exactly what he needed. Reflecting on his past choices, he recalled selecting the warrior class to protect his little sister. While the warrior class was far from weak, it no longer suited his current goals. Without the burden of protecting someone else, he realized that speed and mobility were paramount. With this in mind, he stretched his hand toward one of the towering mirrors and selected the assassin class. As his fingers touched the glass, a brilliant blue light enveloped his hand, and a system window materialized before him. The system announced that the artifact, the Eye of Judgment, had already been bound to him and would activate immediately. Behind him, a massive, otherworldly eye materialized, its gaze piercing and omnipotent. Another system window appeared, revealing that the protagonist possessed unique attributes, the might of judgment and the passive of might. The system elaborated that these attributes granted him unparalleled advantages. Upon entering the god's game, he would automatically receive the highest quality profession and talents, setting him far above ordinary players. A smile crossed the protagonist's face as he marveled at the Eye of Judgment's power. He speculated that the artifact's bond with him had persisted even through his rebirth. Could it be that the Eye of Judgment truly recognized him as its master? If so, it would render the artifact useless to anyone else, even if they tried to steal it, as Song Fei and his little sister had done in his past life. He even wondered if the Eye of Judgment was responsible for his rebirth, granting him the second chance to rewrite his destiny. Suddenly, a dark, swirling aura began to seep into his body, catching him off guard. The system congratulated him, announcing that he had unlocked a hidden profession. The class transformation process began, and the dark aura engulfed him completely. When it dissipated, the protagonist emerged transformed. His once black hair was now stark white, and an overwhelming aura radiated from him, signaling his newfound power. The system informed him that he had become a shadow, a high-level hidden assassin class, far superior to the warrior class he had chosen in his past life. The protagonist explained that the shadow class granted immense power immediately upon unlocking it, making it a rare and coveted profession. He touched his face, reflecting on the incredible luck, or perhaps fate, that had led him to this moment. When selecting a profession, there was always a slim chance of obtaining a hidden class. Thanks to his authority of judgment skill, that slim chance had become a certainty. The system then detailed some of the abilities granted by the Eye of Judgment. The first was the Authority of Judgment, described as the most ancient and primordial authority in the universe. It transcended the rules and order that governed reality itself. However, the system clarified that the protagonist, lacking divinity, could not actively wield its full power. Still, its passive effects remained active, providing him with an extraordinary edge. The protagonist was visibly surprised by this revelation. In his past life, it wasn't until the 7th year of the god's game that humanity learned of the existence of the power of order. A powerful individual had escaped the game world and reached the land of order, revealing the existence of this transcendent force. Yet, despite years of effort, no one had ever managed to obtain it. Now the protagonist realized that he possessed the original authority that nullified rules and order, a power that could reshape the very fabric of reality. With a determined expression, he acknowledged that his goals had expanded beyond mere revenge. If he could escape the god's game and reach the land of order, obtaining divinity along the way, he would be able to fully activate the authority of judgment. Suddenly, a system screen materialized in front of the protagonist, its glowing text demanding that he enter a code name to be known by in the game. After a moment of contemplation, he decided on a name that reflected his newfound identity, Shadow. It was a fitting choice, he thought, given that his profession was born from the darkness itself. As he confirmed the name, the system acknowledged it, and a dark aura began to swirl around him. The system announced that he was about to enter the game world, Earth, abandoned by gods. The system elaborated on the grim reality of this world, a ruined land overrun by countless monsters that wreaked havoc everywhere. It warned him to tread carefully, as these creatures were relentless and would stop at nothing to tear him apart and steal his life. The system further explained that once he left the safety of the starter town and began slaying monsters, he would earn tradable life, a valuable resource. However, death in the game came at a steep cost. If he fell, half of his life, both tradable and non-tradable, would be deducted. The stakes were high, but the protagonist was undeterred. The scene shifted to his arrival in the starter village, a place known as Shelltown. The system explained that this was a peace zone, a sanctuary where monsters could not enter, and players were forbidden from attacking one another. Here the life loss rate was minimal, set at 1x. The protagonist took in his surroundings, noting the chaos as other players, freshly dragged into the game, scrambled to make sense of their situation. They murmured in confusion, asking how they had ended up here. Many recalled falling asleep only to wake up in the hall of profession selection, unaware of the nightmare they had been thrust into. The protagonist, however, remained focused. He observed the crowd, noting how quickly the game had drawn in so many people. He knew that soon, powerful individuals from various countries would emerge, seeking to reshape the world in their image. If he wanted to stay ahead, he had to act quickly. As he moved through the town, his striking appearance drew attention. His custom-made attire and the dark aura radiating from him set him apart from the other players. Whispers rippled through the crowd as they speculated about his profession. One player, an assassin like him, recognized the dagger at his side, but was baffled by the stark difference in their appearances. While the other assassin lacked any distinctive aura, the protagonist exuded an air of power and mystery. The contrast was undeniable, and it only fueled the curiosity of those around him. As the protagonist made his way toward the edge of the starter town, a group of players respawned in front of him, their faces pale and shaken. It seemed that death in the game didn't mean the end. Instead, players were transported back to the safety of Shelltown. The group consisted of 3 men and 1 woman, their frustration evident as they vented about their recent encounter with a level 1 creeper monster. One of the men lamented how a single bite from the creature had reduced his life by half, while another complained that their combined efforts had only managed to chip away a third of the monster's health. The third man was visibly distraught, his life now halved and his confidence shattered. They turned to the woman who appeared to be their leader, seeking guidance on what to do next. Before she could respond, her gaze fell on the protagonist. He in turn studied her with a keen eye. Unlike the others, she wielded a long bow instead of the standard short bow given to archers. This detail didn't escape his notice, and he deduced that she must possess a hidden profession, a rare and powerful advantage. The woman, intrigued by the protagonist's imposing presence and unique attire, approached him with an offer. She suggested that they team up, reasoning that the monsters outside were too strong for any one person to handle alone. Since her group had already faced a monster, albeit unsuccessfully, they had some experience to share. The protagonist, however, couldn't help but inwardly chuckle at her reasoning. The only experience this group has is dying. Politely but firmly, he declined her offer, stating that he preferred to work alone. His refusal left the woman stunned, and the men in her group began to mutter among themselves. They questioned his arrogance, wondering how someone could believe they could take on the monsters alone when even 4 of them couldn't manage it. Despite their skepticism, the woman sensed that there was more to the protagonist than met the eye. Determined to uncover his secrets, she decided to check his status window. Her eyes widened as she read his codename, Shadow. She scoffed at what she perceived as pretentiousness, but couldn't shake the feeling that he was hiding something significant. Turning to her crew, she announced that they would follow the protagonist and observe his skills. Perhaps, she speculated, he had discovered some valuable information about the monsters that he was keeping to himself. With a sinister grin, she added that she couldn't wait to see how he fared or how he fell. The protagonist strode confidently toward the exit of Shelltown, with the blonde girl and her companions trailing cautiously behind him. Their movements were deliberate as they ducked behind a tree, their eyes fixed on his retreating figure. The blonde girl, her voice tinged with frustration, muttered to her team about the strangeness and danger of this world, abandoned by the gods. She admitted that she didn't fully understand why they had been dragged into this nightmare. However, as a seasoned online gamer, she had quickly formed a team to tackle the challenges ahead. Despite her experience, she hadn't anticipated how brutally the game would humble them. The very first monster they encountered outside the newbie village had annihilated them effortlessly, serving as a stark reminder of their unpreparedness. She concluded that such a monster was far beyond the capabilities of any level 1 player. The 2 men in her team couldn't help but speculate about the protagonist. One of them, an assassin like the protagonist, pointed out the glaring differences between them. While he wielded a standard dagger, the protagonist carried a short sword, a weapon that exuded lethality. The assassin also noted that the protagonist's speed was noticeably faster and that his attire was unlike anything they had seen, custom-made and radiating an aura of power. Observing these details, the blonde girl couldn't shake the feeling that the protagonist was an anomaly. She quietly resolved to follow him, hoping to glean valuable information that might give her team an edge. However, just as she was about to signal her team to move closer, the protagonist suddenly stopped and glanced over his shoulder. The blonde girl froze, her heart pounding as she wondered if he had spotted them. Before she could react, the protagonist activated a skill called Latent Image. A dark aura enveloped his body, and in an instant he vanished into thin air, as though he had never been there. The group stared in stunned silence, their minds struggling to process what they had just witnessed. The assassin in their team was the first to recover, explaining that the protagonist must have used the stealth ability, a basic skill for assassins. Yet, he admitted that the protagonist's version of the skill was far more impressive than anything he had seen. The blonde girl, shaken but determined, decided that following the protagonist was no longer an option. She suggested they return to the safety of the starter town to regroup and explore other avenues for leveling up. She reminded her team that venturing outside the newbie village was far too dangerous, especially since their lifespans had already been halved after their first death. The men agreed, speculating that the town might hold hidden rewards, such as treasure chests or NPCs with valuable information. They clung to the hope that there was still a way to grow stronger without risking their lives further. Meanwhile, the system provided an explanation of the skill the protagonist had just used. Latent Image allowed the user to enter an invisible state, rendering them undetectable to both enemies and allies. While invisible, the user's first strike after breaking stealth was significantly more powerful. Additionally, the invisibility mastery skill doubled the duration of the invisibility and increased the user's stealth level by 1. The protagonist himself was pleasantly surprised by the effectiveness of his shadow class abilities. Unlike ordinary assassins, whose stealth could be easily detected at level 1, his unique skills ensured that neither players nor monsters could sense his presence in the early stages of the game. As he moved away from the blonde girl and her team, the protagonist dismissed them as naive fools. He knew that the starter town offered no shortcuts to power. It was merely a refuge for players, a temporary sanctuary in a world where the weak were little more than prey for monsters. His focus remained unwavering as he continued his journey. His invisibility eventually wore off, and he noted that while the skill's duration was short, its cooldown began the moment it was activated, allowing him to vanish again in mere seconds. A system screen materialized in front of him, displaying his current status. His code name, Shadow, and his profession, Shadow, were prominently displayed. At level 1, he possessed a non-tradable lifespan of 75 years and a tradable lifespan of 0 years. His attributes were as follows: Strength at 10 points with a bonus of 3, Constitution at 10 points with a bonus of 3, Agility at 10 points with a bonus of 8, and Spirit at 10 points with a bonus of 5. The protagonist explained that every player started with 10 points in each attribute, with bonus points allocated based on their chosen profession. In his past life as a warrior, he had received only 3 bonus points in Strength and Constitution. This time, however, the Shadow class granted him bonus points across all attributes, with Agility receiving a particularly high boost of 8 points. Another system window appeared, informing him that he had 5 free attribute points to allocate. The protagonist paused to consider his options. He knew that many players prioritized strength or spirit at the start, hoping to enhance their physical power or magical abilities. However, he dismissed this approach as fundamentally flawed. In a world where even a single monster attack could be fatal, raw power meant little without the speed to avoid damage. With this in mind, he allocated all 5 points to agility, boosting it to 10 points with a total bonus of 13. The system confirmed the allocation, and the protagonist felt a surge of satisfaction. He explained that agility was the key to survival in the early stages of the game. No matter how much one invested in strength or spirit, a single hit from a monster could spell doom. By maximizing his speed, he could outmaneuver his enemies, striking without taking damage. As the protagonist moved forward, his sharp senses picked up on a faint guttural noise. He paused, his gaze narrowing as he scanned the area ahead. There, lurking in the shadows, was a grotesque creature, a level 1 creeper, its grade marked as normal by the system. The monster's twisted form and eerie sounds sent a chill through the air, but the protagonist remained calm. He recognized this creature as the same one that had decimated the blonde girl's team earlier. Its body bore the scars of their futile struggle. wounds that suggested they had managed to inflict some damage before being overwhelmed. The creeper, sensing the protagonist's presence, lunged at him with a guttural snarl. Yet the protagonist didn't flinch. He sidestepped the attack with effortless grace, his movements fluid and precise. As he evaded, he explained that creeper monsters were notorious for their insatiable hunger for life force. When they killed a player, they absorbed their victim's lifespan, using it to grow stronger and evolve. The wounds on this creeper's body were evidence that the blonde girl's team had fought valiantly, but their efforts had only delayed the inevitable. With a flick of his wrist, the protagonist drew his short sword. A dark aura began to emanate from his body, his eyes glowing a menacing red as he activated his latent image skill. In an instant, he vanished from sight, leaving the creeper bewildered and disoriented. The monster snarled, its head swiveling as it searched for its elusive prey. Unbeknownst to it, the protagonist was already above, poised to strike. He deactivated his stealth just as he descended, his blade slicing through the air with lethal precision. This technique, known as break stealth, capitalized on the enhanced attack power granted by the latent image skill, delivering a devastating blow. The system immediately confirmed the success of his attack, a scream materializing to display the damage dealt, a staggering 174 points. The level 1 creeper collapsed, its lifeless form dissolving into energy. The protagonist gained 10 experience points, but even he was momentarily taken aback by the sheer magnitude of the damage he had inflicted. He had expected a powerful strike, but this level of destruction far exceeded his expectations. The system explained that his backstab skill had played a crucial role. When attacking an enemy outside their field of vision, the damage was doubled, a mechanic that turned the protagonist into a lethal predator. As he absorbed the implications of this skill, memories from his past life flooded his mind. He recalled the grueling battles he had endured as a warrior, where a critical hit dealt a mere 40 points of damage. Defeating a single creeper had been a Herculean task, leaving him battered and exhausted. Back then, his focus had been on protecting his little sister, sacrificing his own growth to ensure her safety. He had given her the lion's share of the rewards, leaving himself perpetually underpowered. But now things were different. This time he fought for himself and the results spoke for themselves. The system informed him of his rewards: 3 days of tradable life and an astonishing 54 years and 155 days of non-tradable life. The protagonist crushed the monster's energy in his hand, savoring the rush of power. But the rewards didn't end there. Another system window appeared, announcing that the authority of judgment had been activated. The system congratulated him on obtaining the talent Infinite Evolution, a rare and powerful ability. This talent allowed him to earn evolution points by slaying monsters in solo mode, which could be used to upgrade his skills. Additionally, he would automatically receive 5 evolution points every 24 hours, with the potential to earn 100% of the evolution points from solo boss kills. Currently, he had 5 evolution points. As the protagonist processed the system information, a thought crossed his mind. Could the infinite evolution skill upgrade his existing abilities? In his past life, such a concept was unheard of. Whether it was gear or a skill book, no matter the grade of an item dropped by a monster, it always remained at its original level. That was the established rule of the game. Yet, this infinite evolution skill defied those very principles, transcending the constraints of order. The sheer potential of this ability piqued his curiosity, and he was eager to test its limits. He selected 2 of his current skills, Backstab and his profession, Shadow, to undergo evolution. The moment he made his choice, a system notification appeared before him, confirming the consumption of 4 evolution points and the successful upgrade of his abilities. The first enhancement was to his Shadow profession, now elevated to a bronze tier skill. The improvements were striking. He could now enter stealth mode for 12 to 16 seconds, remaining completely invisible even while attacking. Furthermore, the attack power of the strike that broke invisibility had increased from 60 to 80, while the cooldown had been reduced from 28 to 26 seconds. Next, his initial skill, Backstab, advanced from poor to normal quality. Its passive effect now boosted damage by 15% when striking from behind or outside an enemy's field of vision, up from the previous 10%. Realizing the extent of these upgrades, he noted that his latent shadow skill's duration had increased to 16 seconds. When combined with the mastery effect of invisibility, it effectively doubled to 32 seconds, making it possible for him to achieve near-perpetual stealth. If he had obtained this enhancement earlier, he mused, even a full-health creeper could have been taken down in a single blow. His thoughts were suddenly interrupted by a voice scoffing at the idea of someone as skinny as him killing a monster solo. Turning toward the source, he saw two individuals. A muscular man attempting to impress a girl. The girl addressed him as Ganshi, showering him with praise, and confidently asserting that with his build, he could easily handle at least 10 monsters at once. Ganshi, laughing, assured her that she had nothing to fear with him around. Observing the interaction between Ganshi and the girl, the protagonist sensed that something was amiss. A shadow loomed above them, and he spotted a massive spider-like monster lurking at the top of the tree where Ganshi and the girl stood, oblivious to the imminent danger. Ganshi turned to the protagonist and extended an offer, suggesting that he join them as Ganshi would protect him. However, the protagonist was already moving. Recognizing the monstrous creature as a nurse, without hesitation, he activated his latent image skill and vanished into invisibility. The girl gasped, pointing out the protagonist's sudden disappearance. Ganshi dismissed it with a smug chuckle, claiming that the weakling must have been intimidated by his sheer strength. However, his arrogance was short-lived. Before he could react, the massive spider descended upon them, followed closely by a second, smaller spider. By the time Ganshi realized the peril, it was far too late. The creatures struck, crushing him and the girl in an instant. The system identified the monstrous assailant as the Nurse, a level 1 bronze rarity boss, and its companion as a baby spider, a level 1 common rarity creature. Nearby, still cloaked in invisibility, the protagonist calmly assessed the situation. The Nurse was a formidable foe with approximately 1,600 health points, far beyond what a novice could handle, especially given that it commanded an entire horde of smaller spiders. However, he saw this as the perfect opportunity to test his newly upgraded skills. Without hesitation, he lunged at the Nurse, executing a strike designed to break his invisibility and maximize his damage output. His blade found its mark, and the Nurse recoiled, blood pouring heavily from the wound. In retaliation, the creature lashed out with a powerful attack, but the protagonist swiftly evaded by sliding under its legs. Without missing a beat, he reactivated his latent image skill, disappearing once more into the shadows. A system notification appeared, confirming that he had inflicted 338 points of damage, a solid hit, but still insufficient against such a formidable opponent. Another message indicated that he had sustained 9 points of damage, a minor setback considering his agility. With only 130 health points to his name, he knew a direct confrontation would be disastrous. Yet, he couldn't help but marvel at the raw power of his upgraded attack. Scoring over 300 damage in a single strike was exhilarating. Frustrated by the unseen threat, the Nurse erupted in fury, unleashing a violent rampage upon its surroundings in a desperate attempt to strike back. The protagonist watched, well aware that these creatures were not mindless. They adapted and retaliated. This battle was far from over, but he was more than ready to see just how far his newfound strength could take him. The protagonist quickly realized that the Nurse was attacking wildly in all directions, making it too risky to engage directly. With the baby spider also on high alert, a frontal assault was out of the question. Instead, he decided to test a new approach. As the Nurse prepared to take off, launching its web to escape, a high-speed rock suddenly struck its abdomen, leaving a gaping hole. A system notification confirmed that the attack had dealt 299 points of damage. The protagonist explained his strategy, leveraging the extra damage triggered by breaking invisibility alongside his upgraded skills. Since the system treated thrown objects as legitimate attacks, each stone he hurled was just as effective as a direct strike. Without hesitation, he launched another rock, confident that once his latent image skill cooled down, he could repeat the cycle indefinitely. The system soon confirmed another hit, inflicting 279 points of damage. Employing this tactic repeatedly, he systematically weakened the Nurse. Before long, an announcement reverberated across the starter village, Shelltown. The leaderboard had been updated. The system declared that a player named Shadow had slain the Nurse, a bronze-rank monster, becoming the first player to reach level 2. His name was broadcasted throughout the village, and with that, the Shell Town leaderboard was officially open. Other players were left in disbelief. Many recalled being slain by the nurse multiple times, making it inconceivable that a single player had managed to defeat it solo. Murmurs spread as players scrambled for information on this mysterious shadow. Some suspected an exploit, while others stared at the leaderboard, stunned that only one name was listed. Among the shocked spectators was the blonde girl from earlier, along with her team. She struggled to comprehend how a level 1 player could take down a boss-tier monster alone. Even common monsters proved challenging for them. Yet Shadow had bested a bronze-ranked creature. Doubt crept into her mind. Was there an error in the system? Gonchi and his companion, the very ones who had perished to the nurse, were equally dumbfounded. They couldn't fathom how someone had defeated the massive spider while also dealing with its swarm of minions. The girl suddenly recalled the hooded figure they had dismissed earlier. Could he be Shadow? Back with the protagonist, a system notification materialized before him, confirming his victory over the nurse. He had gained 300 experience points, reached level 2, and earned 2 evolution points. Additionally, he had unlocked Shell Town's level leaderboard and received 1 reputation point. The entire town had been notified of his feat. As the nurse's body disintegrated into energy, he remarked that once the boss was slain, the remaining spiders scattered in fear. However, he regretted not eliminating them first, missing out on valuable experience points. Another system notification appeared, revealing his newly acquired rewards: 46 days of transferable life, a bronze-tier skill book called Hand of Avarice, and a corrosion dagger, a bronze-tier weapon that boosted attack power by 35 points and agility by 4. Additionally, he gained 2 more evolution points. Intrigued by Hand of Avarice, he focused on the skill book. The system explained that it was an assassin-exclusive ability, allowing the user to extract additional loot from monster corpses with a 20% success rate. The only requirement was that the player must be at least level 1. He marveled at his unexpected fortune. Who would have thought that a bronze-rank boss would drop such a rare and powerful skill? This ability could drastically enhance his equipment acquisition rate. He recalled a player from his past life, God of Sin, who, despite his mediocre combat abilities, had become one of the most renowned figures in the game solely due to Hand of Avarice. His influence had grown to the point where he had an exclusive bodyguard. A sudden realization struck the protagonist. If Hand of Avarice had a 20% success rate, what would happen if he combined it with his infinite evolution talent? Theoretically, he could not only boost the odds, but also increase the amount of loot obtained. The thought filled him with anticipation. The scene transitioned back to the real world, where students were making their way to school. Among them was the protagonist's younger sister, walking alongside her friend. As they walked, the friend urged her to call her brother and apologize, reminding her that they had skipped an important exam the previous day to secretly support Song Fei. She emphasized that their brother must be furious. However, the younger sister dismissed the idea, insisting that she had done nothing wrong and saw no reason to apologize. In her eyes, it was her brother's interference that had caused them to miss Song Fei's entry time. If anyone should be apologizing, she argued, it should be him. Her friend tried to reason with her, pointing out how good her brother had always been to her. She even admitted to envying her for having such a caring sibling. But the younger sister coldly told her to stop meddling, bluntly stating that he wasn't even her real brother. She declared that she already had a brother, Song Fei. As they arrived at school, they noticed a commotion in their classroom. A group of students was gathered around a desk, whispering anxiously. Curious, they moved closer and witnessed an unsettling sight. One of their classmates, Jiang Wei, was slumped over his desk, his body slowly fading away. Panic spread as a girl, alarmed by what she saw, asked what was happening to Jiang Wei. Another student explained that moments ago, Jiang Wei had simply said he wanted to take a nap, and then he had started disappearing. Murmurs rippled through the crowd as some students revealed that Jiang Wei wasn't the only one experiencing this phenomenon. Social media was flooded with similar cases worldwide. Reports suggested that when people fell asleep, they entered a translucent, eerie state, but no one knew why. Fear gripped the students as one girl hurriedly pulled out her phone, determined to call her parents and warn them. She urged the protagonist's sister to do the same and inform her brother. But the younger sister, still harboring resentment, stubbornly refused. She angrily declared that she had no intention of reaching out to him and that she hated him, even going as far as to say that the world would be better off if he were dead. Meanwhile, back in the game world, the system confirmed that the evolution of Hand of Avarice was complete. The skill had advanced from a bronze-level ability to gold tier. The system explained that the success rate for obtaining extra loot had skyrocketed from 20% to an impressive 70%. A new notification appeared, confirming that the protagonist had successfully learned Hand of Avarice and earned an additional 2 evolution points, along with a staggering 46 days of transferable life. He couldn't help but marvel at his fortune. Not only had he gained extra evolution points, but he was now just 1 point away from evolving Hand of Avarice again. If he reached 3 evolution points, he could push the skill to its peak, ensuring a 100% success rate for extra loot drops. The mere thought sent a surge of excitement through him. His path to power was accelerating faster than he had ever imagined. Activating his latent image skill, the protagonist faded into invisibility, his thoughts racing. By now, every country in the world must have caught on to the strange phenomenon of people falling asleep and never waking up. It was only a matter of time before a massive influx of players joined the game, and he needed to stay ahead of the curve. His priority was to secure better equipment, giving him an advantage before the competition caught up. A system notification confirmed that he had successfully equipped the Corroded Dagger, a bronze-tier weapon that boosted his attack power by 34 points and increased his agility by 4. He mused that soon, people would realize that skills and equipment from the game could be transferred into reality. When that happened, the world would descend into chaos. He recalled that for extraction to be possible, 2 conditions had to be met: reaching level 10 and accumulating enough transferable life. Checking his status window, he acknowledged that simply killing monsters wouldn't be enough. The process was too slow. If he truly wanted to accelerate his progress, he needed to hunt more powerful boss monsters. His thoughts were interrupted by the distant sounds of combat. Following the noise, he moved to the edge of a cliff, peering down to assess the situation below. Below him, a group of players was locked in battle against a level 2 monster known as the Runner, a bronze-tier creature that appeared to be overwhelming them. A smirk played on his lips. Just when he was about to lose focus, an opportunity fell right into his lap. His gaze sharpened as he recognized one of the combatants, Wang Meng. He hadn't expected to find him here, but the rumors surrounding Wang Meng seemed to hold some truth. According to speculation, when Wang Meng first entered the forgotten game of the gods, he had assembled a team of 6 players, each possessing a hidden profession. As the fight unfolded, Wang Meng activated his Holy Barrier skill, summoning a golden shield to protect himself from the runner's relentless attacks. The protagonist silently observed, noting that Wang Meng's hidden profession, Sacred Shield Warrior, granted him twice the base attributes of a normal warrior, along with an invincibility skill. The scene shifted as a red-haired mage stepped forward, channeling a powerful fireball spell. The projectile slammed into the runner, but the damage inflicted was only 70 points. The protagonist recognized her as a mage prophet, a hidden class that doubled a mage's spell damage and granted access to a prophetic fireball ability. Next, his attention turned to an archer and a priest among the group. The archer, wielding a longbow, was a sharp-eyed archer, boasting twice the attributes of a standard archer with the ability to fire continuous arrows. Meanwhile, the priest, an oracle priest, possessed double the healing abilities of an ordinary priest and started with a potent group healing skill. Despite the archer's relentless barrage and the mage's magical assault, the runner was simply too fast, effortlessly evading their attacks. The battle took a turn when the monster delivered a devastating blow to Wang Meng, shattering his holy barrier and sending him flying backward. As Wang Meng struggled to recover, the archer voiced his frustration, stating that the runner's speed made it nearly impossible to land a long-range attack. Receiving healing from the oracle priest, Wang Meng remained resolute. He believed that if they continued their strategy attacking while he tanked, and the priest provided support, they would eventually claim victory. Watching from above, the protagonist smirked at Wang Meng's optimism. His strategy might work in theory, but this was a battlefield. The longer a fight dragged on, the greater the chance of attracting unwanted attention. Almost as if on cue, dark figures emerged from the shadows. The protagonist narrowed his eyes as a new threat arrived: contaminators. These level 2, common-tier monsters, covered in thick, dark brown sludge, specialized in ranged attacks. Wang Meng's expression shifted to one of concern as the monsters advanced. One of his teammates rushed forward, warning him of the incoming danger. The player swung a massive sword at the contaminators, but to everyone's shock, the attack barely left a mark, dealing a mere 33 points of damage. Watching intently, the protagonist's interest was piqued. This team possessed hidden professions he had never encountered before. Yet despite their unique abilities, even they seemed to struggle against these creatures. As the contaminator launched its counterattack, it spewed a sticky, mud-like goo from its mouth, trapping the players in place. Wang Meng's teammates recoiled in disgust, complaining about the unbearable stench. Immobilized, their movement speed dropped to 0. Meanwhile, another contaminator was relentlessly chasing the red-haired mage girl, who ran frantically, calling out for help. In that instant, the protagonist decided to intervene. Without warning, he vanished from the top of the hill. A moment later, the monster pursuing the mage was decapitated in a single strike. Wang Meng and his team were left in stunned silence, struggling to process what had just happened. Had a contaminator really been taken out in one blow? The monster's body dissolved into loot as the mage hesitantly asked if someone was assisting them. Freed from the contaminator's trap, the swordsman marveled at the impossible feat. Even a level 1 tracker monster would normally require a concentrated attack for over 10 seconds to be defeated, yet here was a level 2 contaminator being obliterated instantly. Before they could react, another contaminator was struck down with a single blow, the attack dealing a staggering 441 points of damage. Panicking, the swordsman turned to the mage, Lizzie, and asked if she had seen the attacker. She shook her head in confusion. Wang Meng quickly regained his composure, rallying his team. He instructed them to stay focused, acknowledging that while their unseen ally was assisting them, they still had to fight. Meanwhile, the protagonist, still invisible, silently perched himself on a tree behind Wang Meng. As the team turned their attention back to the runner, Wang Meng noted that with the contaminators eliminated, their only remaining enemy was the runner itself. Just then, a system screen materialized before the protagonist, confirming that he had slain 2 level 2 contaminators, earning 40 experience points and 1 evolution point. Additionally, the system notified him that he had acquired a new skill book, Poison Dart, a standard-level assassin skill. Alongside this, he also gained 8 days of transferable life. Observing the system screen, the protagonist mused about the Poison Dart skill. It was a mid to long-range attack that inflicted continuous damage, an exceptionally useful skill for an assassin. Without hesitation, he chose to evolve it immediately. A new system screen appeared, displaying the upgraded stats of Poison Dart. The skill had evolved from normal rank to silver rank. The system detailed its enhancements. Poison Dart could now be thrown up to a range of 14 meters, dealing a base attack damage of 120 upon impact. Additionally, it would instantly inflict a poison status on the target, causing 50% continuous damage per second for 5 seconds. Though the effect could not stack, the ability had a mere 5-second cooldown and required the user to be at least level 2 to learn it. The protagonist smirked at his newfound power. With this skill, he could eliminate enemies before they even realized what hit them. Wang Meng's battle, however, was turning into a nightmare. The runner monster completely dominated him, its speed and strength far exceeding his own. As he raised his shield to block, the creature's claws tore into his side, piercing flesh with brutal precision. Before he could recover, the beast struck again, its talons sinking deeper into his body and lifting him off the ground like a rag doll. His shield clattered to the floor and a cry of agony escaped his lips. His teammates watched in stunned horror as the healer rushed forward, attempting to mend his wounds, but to no avail. With the monster's claws still embedded in his flesh, the healing magic had no effect. Blood dripped from Wang Meng's mouth as he mustered the strength to order his team to flee. But before they could react, a high-speed projectile shot through the air, slamming directly into the monster's face with devastating force. The impact alone inflicted a staggering 845 points of damage, sending the beast reeling in pain. Wang Meng's teammates were left in shock as they watched the boss monster's health plummet by half in mere seconds. Yet the assault was far from over. Blood poured from the wound in an unrelenting stream, weakening the creature further. It convulsed violently, finally releasing Wang Meng's battered body, which collapsed onto the ground. Desperate to survive, he struggled to crawl to safety, but the monster continued to wail, its condition worsening by the second. Its health drained at a constant rate of 324 points per second, until, at last, the beast crumpled to the ground, succumbing to the relentless damage. At that moment, a system screen materialized before the protagonist, displaying the results of his strike. The damage he had inflicted accounted for over 90% of the boss monster's total health, securing the loot rights entirely for himself. The system acknowledged his victory, announcing that he had slain a runner boss, a bronze-level creature, earning him 600 experience points. A second notification congratulated him on reaching level 3 and rewarded him with 2 evolution points, along with 55 days of transferable life. Standing with an aura of effortless dominance, the protagonist assessed the outcome. He hadn't expected the poison dart's continuous damage effect to work so seamlessly with his break invisibility skill and overall class mechanics. The realization struck him. By leveraging his stealth abilities, he could remain unseen indefinitely, throwing poison darts endlessly. This strategy would make him an unstoppable force in both early and mid-game stages, ensuring that no monster could stand against him. Meanwhile, Wang Meng remained in shock, watching as the boss monster disintegrated into loot before his eyes. The pain from being impaled was so excruciating, so disturbingly real, that for a moment he questioned whether this was truly a game. His thoughts were interrupted when, almost instantly, the loot vanished before him, snatched away in the blink of an eye. It was the work of the elusive aura farmer, moving so fast that Wang Meng hadn't even seen him. Struggling to his feet, Wang Meng lowered his head in gratitude. "I may not know who saved us," he admitted, "but I'm thankful." From the shadows, the protagonist's voice rang out, keeping his identity concealed. "You shouldn't be so trusting of others," he warned, "especially in a wilderness like this." Wang Meng nodded, absorbing the lesson. "I understand. Thank you for the reminder," he replied. "I won't disturb you while you check your loot. My name is Wang Meng. If you ever need help in the future, don't hesitate to ask." Meanwhile, his surviving teammates embraced each other in relief, overwhelmed by the fact that they had made it through such a harrowing ordeal. Back to the protagonist, he stood silently, holding the loot orb in his hand, contemplating his next move. He acknowledged that Wang Meng was not only a reliable and capable ally, but also someone with the official backing of Desha, making him incredibly well-connected and wealthy. This realization sparked an idea. He needed a stable sales channel where he could offload excess gear and items he didn't need. Activating Hand of Avarice on the loot, a system notification materialized before him, congratulating him on obtaining 3 evolution points and an additional 55 days of transferable life. Along with these rewards, he had also acquired a bronze-tier item, the running leather leggings. The system detailed its benefits. Equipping the gear would boost his physical defense by 9 points, enhance all elemental resistances by 5 points, and improve cooldown speed by 15%. The only requirement was being level 2, which he had already surpassed. Evaluating his current stock, he noted that his harvest had been exceptional, and his inventory was filled with equipment from multiple classes. He decided that once his backpack reached capacity, he would head back to Shelltown to trade excess gear for more transferable life. With a cold and calculating gaze, he acknowledged that his current growth rate far exceeded his previous life's progress. A sinister smirk crossed his face as he declared to himself, "Songfei, I'll be coming for you soon." The scene transitioned to a group of struggling players locked in a desperate battle against contaminators and runner-type monsters. Their situation was dire as the creatures overwhelmed them. One of the players, seeing no hope, urged his comrades to flee as more monsters closed in. However, before they could attempt an escape, they froze in sheer terror. A towering monstrosity loomed before them, its grotesque form radiating an oppressive aura of menace. Before they could react, the creature launched a brutal attack. Parts of its body shot outward like arrows, piercing the players with unrelenting speed and killing them instantly. Moments later, the players reappeared in the starter village, Shelltown, having been forcibly respawned. Frustration boiled over as they cursed their fate, lamenting the unfairness of the game. They questioned why monsters always appeared in relentless packs, and fled just as their health dwindled, showcasing an alarming level of intelligence. One of the respawned players raised a pressing concern. How were they supposed to leave the game when they couldn't even reach level 3? Another player explained the grim reality. Exiting the game was only possible after reaching level 3. This meant they needed to level up, and fast. One of them suggested forming a larger group, possibly 6 to 10 players, for more effective progression. However, another quickly dismissed the idea, revealing that he had once witnessed a group of 10 being slaughtered by a massive horde of monsters. A third player interjected, warning that an overly large team would attract the attention of boss monsters. He recounted a chilling tale. He had just seen a group of 40 players unintentionally summon a boss monster known as the Damned, which wiped out 30 of them with a single devastating skill. Elsewhere, a blonde girl and her team also found themselves respawning in Shelltown. Frustration and fear were etched across their faces. If they couldn't even reach level 3, they would be trapped in the game indefinitely. The blonde girl clenched her fists, gritting her teeth as she expressed her growing despair. She theorized that since they had all entered the game after falling asleep, it was only their consciousnesses that were present here. If they couldn't escape, their real-world bodies would eventually succumb to starvation. The mere thought sent a shiver down her spine. One of her teammates, an assassin, spoke with a worried expression, reminding them that they had already died 3 times and had less than 10 years of tradable life left. Before he could finish his sentence, the blonde girl cut him off, her tone firm. Dying again was simply not an option. Just then, the Shelltown leaderboard system flashed into existence above them, displaying the current player rankings. Their eyes widened in disbelief. At the top of the list stood their mysterious shadow guy, the protagonist, who had already reached level 3. He was followed by Wang Meng and Balala, both still struggling at level 1. The blonde girl's mind raced. How was he leveling up so quickly? There had to be a method he knew that they didn't. Determination flared in her eyes as she made a bold decision. If this enigmatic player knew a way to power level, then they had to find a way to convince him to help them reach level 3. Clenching her small fists, she issued an order to her team. Spread the word. If Shadow Guy could get them to level 3 and help them escape the game, she would personally pay him 10 million in cash upon their return to the real world. She smirked inwardly, certain that no one could refuse an offer that lucrative. The scene shifted back to the protagonist, who was effortlessly eliminating contaminator monsters with his poison dark skill. As another monster fell, a system notification appeared, confirming the kill of a level 2 contaminator and awarding 20 experience points along with 1 evolution point. With enough points accumulated, he immediately initiated the evolution of Hand of Avarice. A confirmation screen materialized, deducting 5 evolution points and reducing his remaining balance to 0. Another screen swiftly followed, detailing the enhancement. Hand of Avarice had ascended from Platinum level to Jade level. The system elaborated on its improvements. The skill could now be used on monster corpses, significantly boosting the success rate of obtaining additional loot from 110% to 160%. Furthermore, there was now a 20% chance that the additional loot's rarity would increase by 1 level. Observing the changes, the protagonist assessed the immense potential of the upgrade. A skill capable of increasing loot rarity held extraordinary value, and if this trend continued, the effect could potentially reach an even higher threshold. Just as he reflected on his newfound advantage, his attention was drawn to an ominous presence in the distance. A towering, grotesque figure loomed, the same entity responsible for wiping out an entire group of players. Recognition set in immediately as the system identified it as a bronze-level boss monster, the Damned. The creature was hunched over, greedily absorbing clusters of blue glowing energy, remnants of fallen players. Analyzing the scene, the protagonist quickly deduced that the monster was in the process of evolving, feeding on life energy to ascend to a silver-level boss. Judging by the number of glowing remnants, it must have annihilated at least 40 players. A quick glance at his inventory revealed a frustrating reality. His backpack was already full. Even if he managed to defeat the monster, there would be no space to collect any loot. This situation demanded a calculated approach. After weighing his options, he marked the location on his map. The monster's evolution would take time, providing a perfect opportunity to return to the starter town and offload unnecessary items before confronting it again. With his decision made, he activated his elite shadow skill, vanishing into the dark. The scene shifted to Shell Town, the starter village, where a gathering of players was left stunned by a bold announcement. A blonde-haired girl offered a staggering 10 million in cash to the top-ranked player on the leaderboard, hoping for a way to level up. Among the crowd, a distraught girl burst into tears, lamenting that commoners like them had no hope of escaping this game. Her cries were abruptly cut off as she was dragged away, reinforcing the harsh reality they all faced. Amid the murmurs and tension, the atmosphere suddenly shifted. An overwhelming aura of dominance washed over the crowd, and all eyes turned toward the newcomer. It was none other than the protagonist. His presence alone exuded raw power, leaving everyone speechless. Without a word, he opened his system window, navigating effortlessly to the cell function. In an instant, a colossal system notification appeared above him, announcing that he had established an equipment and skill sales shop. The message further stated that the shop would only remain active for 10 minutes, urging players to act quickly. Seated with a calm and composed demeanor, the protagonist displayed a collection of glowing orbs, the spoils of countless battles. Panic rippled through the gathered players, their voices rising in confusion and amazement. Some wondered when he had even arrived, while others were shocked to see him casually carrying 2 sets of bronze gear, yet still offering more for sale. Then, realization struck as they checked his username. This was Shadow, the legendary #1 player. Yet, despite his prominence, none could see his face, a mystery explained by the game's hide face function. One player noted that since in-game appearances mirrored real-life looks, the protagonist must be deliberately concealing his identity. Breaking through the murmurs, a woman stepped forward. Judging by her attire and physique, she was undoubtedly a mage. Without hesitation, she inquired about the price of the ice cone spell. The protagonist responded bluntly. It cost 100 days of tradable life. Internally, he recognized her as Grey Rose, currently ranked 11th in Shelltown's leaderboard. He also noted that she, too, had activated the hide face function. Grey Rose hesitated before attempting to negotiate. She argued that 100 days was too steep and asked if he could lower the price. However, the protagonist remained firm. He explained that Ice Cone was a fundamental skill for mages, significantly boosting early-game monster elimination efficiency. Given its value, 100 days of tradable life was already a bargain. She then asked if he would accept real-world money instead, but the protagonist refused, suggesting that if she had cash, she should buy tradable life from others and return when she had enough. After a moment of contemplation, Grey Rose turned to her teammates for input. They consisted of 2 other players who quickly supported her decision. They acknowledged that their rapid progression to level 2 was thanks to her leadership and had no objections to pooling their resources. One teammate pointed out that acquiring Ice Cone would allow their team to reach level 3 much faster, enabling them to return to reality sooner. Some among them had pressing matters to attend to in the real world, making this investment worthwhile. Without further hesitation, Grey Rose instructed her teammates to transfer all their tradable life to her, promising to reimburse them with real money once they escaped the game. Turning back to the protagonist, the woman transferred 100 days of tradable life, confirming that she was ready to purchase the Ice Cone spell. The protagonist quickly assessed the situation, reasoning that for a level 2 team to have come this far, They must have slain at least 30 to 40 tracker monsters, meaning their total tradable life far exceeded 100 days. The system promptly verified the transaction, announcing that the protagonist had successfully sold the ice cone spell and gained 100 days of tradable life, increasing his total from 268 days to 368 days. As the woman turned to leave, a familiar presence interrupted. The blonde girl from earlier rushed up to him, her face brimming with self-satisfaction. With an air of superiority, she declared that she had finally found him. Smirking, she arrogantly offered him an opportunity. If he boosted her to level 3, she would reward him with 10 million in cash once they returned to reality. The nearby players gasped in shock, murmuring amongst themselves about the rumors being true. The idea of earning 10 million with such ease seemed unreal. She continued, boasting about her background. Her father, she claimed, was the president of Jong Industries, so there was no need for him to doubt her ability to pay. The protagonist, however, remained unfazed. He processed the situation carefully, recognizing her true identity, Zhang Li. In his past life, she had been the leader of a notorious criminal syndicate, later eradicated by authorities. Reports had exposed her tactics, luring people in with offers of cash in exchange for tradable life, only to kidnap and enslave them. Those who resisted met gruesome fates in the real world. With a cold, unwavering expression, the protagonist rejected her offer outright, telling her to get lost. Shen Kaili stood frozen in disbelief. She couldn't comprehend why someone would refuse such a golden opportunity. Frustration flickered across her face as she warned him that despite his current strength in the game, no one truly understood what was happening. She assured him that aligning with her would guarantee a life of luxury, cars, houses, women, anything he desired. But the protagonist remained unmoved. If she wasn't there to buy something, she needed to leave. Internally, he knew the reality of the situation. Cash was about to become worthless soon. Tradable life would be the only currency that mattered. Shen Kaili's expression twisted with rage. She lashed out, calling him an ungrateful fool and insisting she was doing him a favor. She threatened that if this were the real world, she would have already put him in his place. The protagonist, however, had no patience for empty threats. His gaze darkened as he spoke in a chilling, razor-sharp tone. He warned her that if she uttered another word, he would ensure she lost every last day of her tradable life. To drive his point home, he released a suffocating, menacing aura, sending shivers down the spines of those nearby. Shen Kaili and her teammates immediately recoiled in fear, their bravado shattering as they scrambled to escape. The remaining players stood in confusion, wondering what had terrified them so much. With the disturbance dealt with, the protagonist resumed his sales. The system confirmed another successful transaction. A dim light tunic had been sold, earning him 19 more days of tradable life. His total now stood at 546 days. The players who had purchased from him marveled at their newfound strength, but the protagonist had already shifted his focus elsewhere. With everything sold, it was time to deal with the damned boss monster. Activating his stealth ability, Hidden Shadow, he vanished from sight. As he did, he reflected on the ignorance of the players around him. At this moment, none of them realized that tradable life had another hidden function, one that would soon shake the very fabric of reality. None of them knew that this game, forgotten by the gods, was on the verge of upending the world's order. As the surrounding players gaped in disbelief, wondering if their eyes had deceived them, the protagonist silently declared the grim truth. The legacies they once prided themselves on would soon become meaningless. In the coming era, only one thing would matter: absolute strength. And those who failed to grasp that would be left behind in the dust of a new world order. The scene then shifts to the blonde girl and her team as they breathe heavily, exhausted from running. The blonde girl declares that not only did Shadow reject her, but he also threatened her. She promises that once she gets to the real world, she will definitely find him and kill him. As she thinks this, she is approached by a man who introduces himself as Lao Mao. He explains that he is currently at level 2 and claims to know a few tricks to level up in this game. He asks if he can take up the offer that Shadow refused. The 10 million offer for helping the blonde girl and her team reach level 3. The blonde girl, looking suspicious, asks what Lao Mao means by tricks. Lao Mao then explains that he doesn't usually share his secrets, but since it's her, he'll make an exception. He reveals that in this situation, to level up, one must allocate all 5 attribute points to agility. That way, their maximum running speed will be slightly faster than the monsters, allowing them to win without taking damage. The blonde girl's eyes widen in shock as she inwardly realizes how foolish she was for putting all her attribute points into strength. She tells Lao Mao that she accepts his proposal, but since he isn't as strong as Shadow, she will only pay him 5 million in cash. She asks if he agrees to these terms. Lao Mao accepts, remarking that while Shadow is strong, he must have some mental issues for rejecting such a huge sum of money. The scene then shifts to the protagonist, who has just arrived at the location he marked earlier on the map. Still in stealth mode, he observes that the damned monster has already advanced to silver rank. Judging by the gray fog enveloping its body, it's still evolving. Activating his poison dart ability, the protagonist notes that the jump from silver to gold rank will take at least 7 or 8 hours. But since he doesn't feel like waiting, he launches the poison dart at the damned monster. The first strike deals massive damage, 659 points, due to his stealth bonus. The poison dart then begins dealing 219 damage per second. The protagonist immediately jumps at the monster, activating his lighten image skill, while reasoning that a silver boss's health is about 2 or 3 times that of a bronze level 1. Suddenly, the monster begins charging a massive magical attack, its hands growing larger. The protagonist notes that he only needs to strike the monster 2 or 3 more times with poison dart to finish it. But in an instant, the monster unleashes its attack, obliterating the surrounding area. He explains that the Damned is a magic-type boss. Most of its skills are area of effect attacks that deal heavy damage at once. After launching the poison dart, he immediately retreats, barely escaping the attack range. Still invisible, he reflects that with his current health and defense, taking the attack head-on would have killed him. As the battle rages on, the monster charges another devastating attack, its hulking frame shifting toward the protagonist. But he remains calm, weaving through the battlefield while monitoring his cooldown timer. His hidden shadow ability is still unavailable, so he knows he must wait for the perfect opening, strike precisely and vanish before the monster can retaliate. Moments later, the creature falters, momentarily distracted. Seizing the opportunity, the protagonist surges forward, activating Poison Dart again. The attack lands cleanly, dealing another 659 damage. The poison effect kicks in, draining the monster's health at 219 damage per second. Realizing its grave danger, the boss attempts to flee, but the protagonist intercepts it from behind, his gaze cold. The monster's desperate retreat is futile. Surrendering would have been easier. In a blur of motion, the protagonist reappears atop the creature's head, slamming it into the ground. The system confirms his victory. He has slain the Damned, a formidable silver rank boss. A flood of notifications appears. 800 EXP gained, leveling up from 3 to 5 instantly. Evolution points awarded. 24 days of tradable life earned. The protagonist chuckles. A single boss kill has propelled him 2 levels forward while granting unexpected rewards. As the monster's body disintegrates into loot, he activates the evolved version of his skill, Hand of Everest. A system screen materializes, confirming the loot. Another 4 evolution points. Additional 124 days of tradable life, doubling his initial haul. He smirks. 2 extra bonuses right off the bat. Calculating further, he realizes the silver rank boss has granted him a total of 12 evolution points and 372 days of tradable life. Just then, another system prompt appears. An unexpected bonus. The secondary effect of Hand of Everest has activated, upgrading 1 looted item from silver to gold rarity. A gold teardrop materializes. No wonder Hand of Everest is classified as a Jade-level skill. It enhances loot beyond its original grade, he thinks. His attention shifts to the scattered loot. 7 or 8 pieces of gear, but his backpack only has 10 slots. He sighs. If he has to keep returning after each boss fight, it'll waste too much time. Ideally, the damned would have dropped a storage ring for convenience. Before he can inspect the loot further, the scene abruptly shifts back to the starter town. There, the mage from Wang Ming's team materializes in a burst of light, relieved to be back. Thanks to Wang Ming. As the rest of the team follows, they express gratitude, acknowledging that without his leadership, they wouldn't have reached level 3 safely. Wang Ming dismisses their praise, insisting their progress was a team effort. However, the mage sighs regretfully. She hadn't managed to add that big guy as a friend in the dungeon. Maybe it was because she'd been covered in mud at the time. A teammate teases her, saying that in her fresh outfit she looks great. Surely the mysterious player wouldn't reject her now. Suddenly, a system announcement echoes through the town. The leaderboard has been updated. Shadow has reached level 5. The news sends shockwaves through the players. Someone exclaims in disbelief, how could Shadow jump from level 3 to 5 so quickly? The only explanation, he must have slain a powerful boss. Another player recalls seeing Shadow selling gear in the town square just 10 minutes ago. Meanwhile, in desperation, one man jokingly, or not, offers his newly 18-year-old sister to Shadow, hoping for a leveling boost. His friends shut him down. Shadow didn't even bat an eye at 10 million cash. Why would he care about matchmaking? Back with Wang Ming's team, panic sets in. They just celebrated reaching level 3, only to learn Shadow has far surpassed them. Wang Ming remains calm, urging them to log out, return to reality, and warn their families about the game's horrors. As their bodies fade, the system confirms their logout. Wang Ming's final words are grave. If the world is descending into chaos, they must at least prepare their loved ones. The scene shifts to the real world. Wang Ming's eyes snap open. He's not just a player, but a police officer. His fellow officers rush to him, shaken. They reveal that his body had begun turning transparent while unconscious, confirming the terrifying truth. Death in the game means erasure in reality. Wang Ming shouts for everyone to gather. Something serious has happened. The camera pans out, revealing he's in a hospital. The stakes are far higher than anyone imagined. Inside a police station, where a serious discussion is taking place, a commanding voice cuts through the room, questioning Wang Ming about his report. According to him, he and his team had formed a party, and remarkably, each member possessed a hidden profession, a significant advantage in the game. Yet despite this, they were nearly wiped out by a single monster. It was only thanks to an unknown player, Shadow, that they were saved at the last moment. Wang Ming confirms that everything in his report is accurate. He then elaborates on Shadow's astonishing progress. When Shadow intervened, he had only been at level 3. However, by the time Wang Ming and his team managed to reach that same level, Shadow had already advanced to level 5, an unprecedented leap of 2 whole levels. This revelation sparks concern among the higher-ranking officers. One of them raises the obvious question. Does this mean Shadow is now the strongest player in the world? How did he manage to level up so quickly? The speculation begins, and Wang Ming offers a possible explanation. Perhaps Shadow defeated a high-level boss monster or accomplished something equally extraordinary. Another officer, intrigued by the details, points out a peculiar inconsistency. Based on Wang Ming's account, Shadow was already level 3 when he rescued them. If that was the case, why hadn't he logged out like the rest of them? Could it be that Shadow had no close family or friends waiting for him in the real world? No reason to return? Wang Ming admits he has no concrete information about Shadow or his real identity. At that moment, a female officer interjects with a bold theory. She suggests that Shadow might be a transmigrator, one of those rare individuals who seemingly appear out of nowhere, rapidly gaining strength as if they were destined to become powerful. She points out that transmigrators are often orphans, which could explain why Shadow hadn't returned to reality. Her speculation stuns the room into silence, and realizing the weight of her words, she blushes in embarrassment. The high-ranking officer, unimpressed, calls her by name, Anyu, and tells her to stop making jokes during such a serious discussion. He dismisses her theory, remarking that she's been reading too many novels. However, shifting back to the main topic, the officer shares critical information. According to classified reports from the higher-ups, researchers have been investigating a disturbing pattern. Many older individuals have been mysteriously dying in their sleep. When the data was cross-referenced with people who had returned from the forgotten game of the gods, a terrifying conclusion emerged. Those who had perished in their sleep had also died multiple times within the game. This revelation confirms a horrifying truth. If a player's lifespan reaches 0 in the game, they don't just die there, they die in reality as well. One of the officers voices his concern, calling the forgotten game of the gods an anomaly, something far beyond their current understanding. The head officer agrees, suggesting that what they are witnessing might be an invasion by unknown higher-dimensional beings. The implications are staggering, and the room falls into a heavy silence as the weight of this possibility sinks in. Without hesitation, the head officer shifts to urgent matters. He informs everyone present that the higher-ups, most likely the government, have issued an emergency directive. Every officer is to form vanguard teams based on their locations, venture into the forgotten game of the gods, and gather as much intelligence as possible. This is no longer just a police matter. The government itself is mobilizing, aiming to create a specialized professional force for this unprecedented crisis. He emphasizes the global scale of the situation. Every nation is racing to explore and understand this new reality, and falling behind in this endeavor would mean losing international influence. For the sake of national security, they must obtain information at all costs. With that, the head officer announces his decision. Anyu will be appointed as the captain of Team 1. Without hesitation, she accepts the role. Wang Ming is designated as her vice captain, and the two are given the authority to choose their own teammates. Wang Ming nods in agreement, understanding the gravity of their mission. The head officer then turns his attention back to Shadow, the mysterious player Wang Ming encountered. Based on Wang Ming's account, Shadow doesn't seem like a malicious person or someone with ill intent. Because of this, the head officer issues a direct order. Anyu and Wang Ming must attempt to befriend him. Their objective is clear: uncover Shadow's real identity and establish a working relationship with him. He further explains his reasoning for putting Anyu in charge. Her extensive knowledge of games and fictional stories makes her the most suited for investigating someone like Shadow, whose abilities and actions seem almost mythical. The head officer expresses hope that Anyu and Wang Ming can secure Shadow as an ally, someone who could act as their representative within the game. If they succeed, they will gain access to vital information that could give them a strategic advantage. As for the rest of the police officers, their primary directive is to maintain public order and prevent mass panic. With these final words, the meeting is adjourned. The sun begins to set, casting a golden glow over the city as the officers prepare for the challenges ahead. The next day, the scene shifts to a high school where the protagonist's younger sister sits at her desk, lost in thought. Around her, students chat excitedly about recent developments. A small group nearby discusses a surprising revelation. Zhang Wei, the student whose body had previously started to vanish, has successfully reached level 3 in the game and logged out safely. One of the girls explains that Zhang Wei shared a crucial detail. If multiple people in the same district fall asleep at the same time, they will all be transported to the same starter village within the game. This news sparks a mix of excitement and concern among the students. Another girl, alarmed by this information, insists, "This won't do. I need to return home and bring my parents into the game. They have no gaming experience, and I'm terrified something might happen to them if they enter this world unprepared." However, another student disagrees, arguing that they shouldn't rush to involve their parents just yet. Instead, we should focus on growing stronger first. Only then will we be capable of protecting our families when the time comes. Meanwhile, the protagonist's younger sister stares at her phone, deep in thought. A nagging frustration bubbles inside her. Why hasn't her brother reached out to her yet? With something as monumental as the forgotten game of the gods unfolding, she expected at least a single message from him. But there's been nothing. Not only has he failed to check on her, but he hasn't even apologized for hitting her earlier. That was completely unlike him. In the past, whenever they fought or she made him angry, he would always find a way to make peace with her. But today, silence. No apologies. No attempts to smooth things over. Even their parents had never so much as laid a finger on her, and yet he, her own brother, had struck her. Still sulking, she tries to justify her actions. All she did was skip class to see Songfei's concert. Was that really such a big deal? She pouts, deciding that unless her brother calls her and apologizes at least 1,000 times, she will never forgive him. Her irritation quickly shifts into excitement as she begins gushing over Songfei. In hindsight, it was a blessing that she had gone to see him yesterday. Once the forgotten game of the gods fully takes over, she might not get many more opportunities to attend his concerts. A dreamy expression takes over her face as she recalls the night before, reliving the moment she stood so close to him during the performance. A mental image of Songfei on stage flashes through her mind, and she melts into full-on fangirl mode, swooning over how amazing he was. But then, a realization hits her. If everyone enters the game world while sleeping, then that means Songfei will too. Her face flushes red as she imagines meeting him inside the game. Would this be her chance? Could fate finally be bringing them together? Her heart races at the thought as she eagerly prepares to go to sleep. Suddenly, she remembers something. Jiang Wei had leveled up to level 3 at an incredibly fast pace. That meant he was likely an expert already. If she wanted to make the most of her time in the game, she needed some solid advice. Without wasting a second, she sends Jiang Wei a message, asking if he has any useful strategies to share before she enters the game world. The scene shifts to Jiang Wei, who is surrounded by his classmates when he receives her message. He glances at his phone, and a smirk spreads across his face. Internally, he marvels at the situation. Who would have thought that even a goddess like the protagonist's younger sister would be reaching out to him for advice? He sees this as a golden opportunity, a sign from the heavens. This was his chance, whatever that meant. Wasting no time, Jiang Wei confidently replies, telling her that she has come to the right person. He then reveals a crucial secret about the game. At the start, she must invest all her attribute points into agility. Otherwise, she won't be fast enough to escape from monsters and will end up dying repeatedly. Skeptical, she asks, "Does that apply even if I choose a mage-type class?" Jiang Wei assures her that it does. Agility isn't completely useless for mages, he explains. In fact, it increases casting speed, which is extremely important in the early stages. Still cautious, she presses further. "What happens if I can't win even after boosting my agility?" Jiang Wei confidently reassures her. "As long as someone in our village reaches level 5, the village's teleportation formation will activate, linking all the starter villages together. Once that happens, you just need to form a random party to help you level up. And when the teleportation circle is active, I'll come and find you." Hearing this, she is immediately overjoyed. Lying back on her bed, she grins inwardly. Simps like Jiang Wei are so useful. Just like that, she has already found someone to carry her. As sleep begins to take over, another thought crosses her mind. This is perfect. She will enter the game before her brother does, level up rapidly and become stronger. And when the time finally comes for her brother to join, she'll make sure he struggles. No carrying, no help. He'll have to fend for himself. Satisfied with her plan, she drifts off to sleep, eager for the adventure ahead. The scene shifts back to the game, where the protagonist stands before the spoils of battle, surveying the loot dropped by the fallen boss monster. Among the scattered treasures, a particular glowing orb catches his eye. As he reaches for it, a system notification appears, revealing that he has obtained the cursed ring, a gold-tier item. The system further explains its attributes. Usable by all professions. Provides a boost of 8 points to all attributes. Increases dark elemental resistance by 26 points. Enhances weak point attacks by 1.5 times. However, the ring requires the user to be at least level 4 to equip. Analyzing the item's benefits, the protagonist quickly realizes that the total attribute boost sums up to 32 points, comparable to leveling up 3 times. Additionally, the ring's dark resistance will be highly useful against numerous enemies, and the weak point attack multiplier adds another layer of advantage. With this in mind, he recognizes the cursed ring as a valuable asset for his journey ahead. Before he can dwell further on his newfound item, another system notification appears, informing him that he has acquired a new skill, Instant Shadow Slash, a silver-tier assassin-type ability. The system elaborates on its mechanics. When activated, the skill unleashes multiple slashes in a single direction, reaching up to 15 meters. Grants temporary invincibility for 5 seconds. Strikes all enemies within a 2.1-meter-wide path 3 times. Each strike inflicts 100 damage and is considered a backstab, though it does not target weak points. Cooldown time, 12 seconds. Realizing the potential of this ability, the protagonist acknowledges that it's a powerful area of effect attack with the added advantage of temporary invisibility. Wasting no time, he immediately learns the skill. With evolution points still remaining, he decides to enhance one of his core abilities, Hand of Avarice. The system promptly deducts 8 evolution points, upgrading the skill from Jade rank to Diamond rank. The effects of Hand of Avarice are significantly improved. The chance of obtaining extra loot from defeated monsters increases from 160% to 220%. The probability of the extra loot upgrading by 1 level jumps from 20% to 40%. Reflecting on the enhancement, the protagonist calculates that with this boost, he will now receive 2 pieces of loot per enemy, making each kill effectively 3 times more rewarding. Not wanting to waste his remaining evolution points, he decides to further upgrade Instant Shadow Slash by 3 levels. The system deducts 3 evolution points, leaving him with just 1 remaining. The skill evolves rapidly, rising from Silver rank to Gold rank, and finally reaching Platinum rank. Instant Shadow Slash has undergone a significant upgrade. Attack range expands from 15 meters to 21 meters. Invisibility duration increases from 5 seconds to 7 seconds. Number of slashes rises from 3 to 5. Strikes all enemies within an expanded 3.1-meter-wide path. Cooldown slightly reduced from 12 seconds to 10.43 seconds. Each strike now deals 200 damage, double its previous potency. Every attack is guaranteed to count as a backstab, ensuring activation of backstab skill effects. Still incapable of targeting weak points. As the protagonist assesses these improvements, he acknowledges that while the cooldown isn't drastically reduced, the skill's ability to grant continuous invisibility can be exploited to gain the upper hand in battle. Shifting his focus to the remaining loot, he quickly determines that most of it is worthless junk. However, one item stands out. A silver-tier warrior skill book, Battle Roar. Recognizing its value, he notes that selling it will grant him additional tradable lifespan. Just as he finishes his evaluation, a sudden movement catches his attention. Turning around, he spots 3 massive creatures rushing toward him. Without hesitation, he identifies them as level 4 limb crawlers, grotesque, predatory monsters. Rather than feeling threatened, he sees this as the perfect opportunity to test the true power of his newly enhanced skill. Without wasting a second, he activates Instant Shadow Slash. In an instant, his form blurs as he unleashes a rapid barrage of high-speed slashes, carving through the creatures effortlessly. The limb crawlers are shredded apart before they even have a chance to react. As the dust settles, a system notification materializes, confirming their defeat. The system immediately registers his victory, awarding him 80 experience points and granting an additional 5 days of tradable lifespan as a reward. Standing amidst the aftermath, a dark, menacing aura radiates from the protagonist. He calmly reflects on his newfound power, realizing that his efficiency in eliminating enemies has skyrocketed once again. He contemplates a potential strategy, reasoning that if he combines his poison dart skill with Instant Shadow Slash, he could secure victory before the battle even begins. Checking his current tradable lifespan, he confirms that he now possesses 618 days. However, to bring his in-game skills and equipment into reality, he requires a minimum of 900 days, approximately 2.5 years worth. With that in mind, he devises his next course of action. Sell all valuable items stored in his inventory. If everything goes as planned, he might reach the minimum required lifespan sooner than expected. Once he reaches level 10, he will finally bridge the gap between the virtual and real worlds.